Welcome, I'm Aaron Dean. The Abbey in West Hollywood has been an institution to many in the queer community for over 30 years, but there are allegations of a darker underbelly to the bliss of the WeHo bar scene. The 19th News conducted an extensive investigation into reports of drugging and assaults at the iconic venue. These harrowing accounts include several occasions where women can't remember entire nights after having a drink. Some victims have taken their case to the authorities, but were met with dead ends and no further action. The Abbey channel spoke with the 19th's LGBTQ plus reporter, and they say that this needed to be brought to the attention of the community. For our audience, without of course giving away all the details of the story, provide an overview of the story that you worked on titled A Night They Can't Remember at one of the country's most popular LGBTQ plus bars. And before we give this overview, we do want to provide an editor's note because this story does contain descriptions of sexual assault and drugging.
Yeah, so we, starting in 2019, really, but really ramping up in 2020 and 2021, my colleague Stephen Blum and I looked into reports that people who went to the Abbey and ordered maybe just one drink, sometimes a water or a soda even, had that drink, got it directly from a bartender, and then within 15 to 20 minutes lost all control of themselves and all memory. And for a long time, they blamed themselves and didn't know what was happening. And we found that to be rather unusual. We started to hear reports of this, and then we started to sort of look online and found a lawsuit that went back to 2013 alleging that two women had been drugged and raped at the bar. And so we started to look into these reports that people were being drugged and possibly assaulted or robbed at the Abbey to see if there was any credence to them. And so the story goes into what seems to be just a number of allegations of people who can't explain what happened to them at what is supposed to be one of our safest spaces for LGBTQ plus people.
And of course, journalist to journalist, when putting together an in-depth piece like this, it takes time. It takes a lot of research, like you mentioned, etc. What was that process like of putting this together? Were there any complexities or any roadblocks that you hit along the way?
Yeah, this is the hardest story that I've ever reported. And I've done a number of really deep dive investigations, transgender prison abuse, homicides. But this story, it's impossible to prove in most cases that someone was drugged and who did it, right? And so how do you report a number of people feel like they may have had a disorienting experience? And that really is the story, right? And I think that most people would agree. They hope that this is not something that's systematically happening at a place that they feel is a safe space. And so just going in with a lot of caution and an open mind about talking to people and getting their stories, and then vetting and verifying through any kind of documentation that we could get, and just talking to a lot of people, but just being really careful to make sure that we were honoring people's experiences, and also honoring that the Abbey really means a lot to people. It's an important space, and not to jump to conclusions about who was doing what and who knew what. And so for us, it was going to be really important just to go really slowly and to fact check everything very, very, very carefully, and understand what was happening, not just in the context of the Abbey, but nightlife as a whole in West Hollywood, in LA, and in the country, because, it is possible for someone to overconsume. And what does that mean versus, at one of these singular experiences? And how do we honor what people are telling us?
So with a story like this, how long did it take?
Yeah, this story took, in total, in the time that we started to really get serious about the reporting, it took 3 years. I thought we would be done with the reporting in 2021. And I think the alleged victims thought we would be done in 2021 also. And it was really painful because the amount of fact checking and corroboration and work we had to do to get documents and to make sure that we had tied all the loose ends actually took 2 years, which is not atypical for a deep dive investigation, but it's a really long time. And we just wanted to be very, very careful about what we had.
And with crimes like this that are talked about in this piece, they often can, like you said, can go unreported, and then sometimes when you report them, they don't get taken that seriously. Can you kind of provide our audience with some context as to why that might be?
Yeah, so what we found about GHB and other sort of party drugs, or what they call, the date rape drugs, is that they are metabolized out of someone's system rather quickly. So a lot of times hospitals don't or cannot test for them. So by the time, you wake up and realize that something may have happened to you, it's already 4 to 6 hours later. The drug is out of your body. So if you're tested for it, it will not show up. And then if you go to law enforcement, what we were consistently hearing from people was that law enforcement said, well, do you have a toxicology report? Because without that, there's nothing we can do. And the answer would always be no, because the chances that someone wound up in an ER, first of all, when they were passed out, would be low. And then if they had been in an ER, they almost never would have been tested for GHB or another substance. And if they were, there's a great chance that that toxicology report came back negative, not because they hadn't been drugged, but because those drugs are metabolized through your system so quickly. And so getting proof for these kinds of crimes was really difficult. And people, a lot of times, did not have on their radar that they would be drugged in a scenario in which they were getting a drink directly from a bartender, or, if their friends brought them a drink directly from the bar. Few people it's ever going to occur to them. And so they blame themselves, right? And so it's not until months, weeks, even years later that someone goes, I did think that was really weird. I did think that would have been a drugging, except that there's no way that that could have happened unless it was someone at the establishment, which just would never have made any sense. And so it's just very rare that people report. And if they do, and if the establishment says, no, we serve strong drinks, you've really got to watch yourself, most people internalize that. And that's what we found over and over and over again.
Well, even with our own reporting here, we've talked to law enforcement experts and things like that, and sometimes, law enforcement can, either drop the ball or not really do their due diligence. From your research, did local investigators, when it came to those that reported, did they do their job? I guess you could say.
That's really hard to say. Law enforcement has told us that they take this very seriously, that they always follow up. What our sources told us was that they felt that they encountered a lot of resistance, that they went and they were told that they needed police reports, or that they didn't have enough evidence, or that this happens all the time and that there was not really a solution or a thing that they could do. So what we got from law enforcement felt different from what we were told by alleged victims. So there was certainly a disparity there. But it does seem to be over and over again, when we talked to folks who had this experience, that they had tried to alert the Abbey police officers, local officials, and there was just no place for them to make any sense of what had happened and to get support within the West Hollywood community. And that actually going to media was a last-ditch effort to be heard.
In a written statement to the 19th, the Abbey denied any wrongdoing, writing, "If we had any evidence that one of our employees or staff had drugged someone, we would terminate them immediately, report it to law enforcement, and stand with the victim by working with law enforcement on any investigation into the crime." In November of 2023, the Abbey came under new ownership, and the Advocate reached out to them for an interview and is waiting for a response. You can read the full article on advocate.com. Thanks for watching the Advocate channel. Download the app in the Apple or Google Play Store to stream us live, and you can even subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Aaron Dean.